Well, thank you for coming in. I'm sure you understand why Armistice Day is a very special day, that it's one where the war dead are commemorated. Now, I'm a great believer in freedom of speech, that people have the right to protest. But isn't it wise not to protest on a day that is held aside for something special?
With all due respect, Jacob, I don't think you're a great believer in freedom of speech or that you understand much about Armistice Day. It's literally called Armistice Day and we're marching for an armistice. So ask yourself this question. Who are the people who better represent the traditions of Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon? Who are the people who better represent the traditions of horror at the carnage of war? Is it a government that is funding and supporting a state that has murdered over 10,000 people now in Gaza, including 4,000 children? Or is it those of us who will pour onto the streets from every community across Britain to say that we want the massacre to stop?
Well, first of all, you're taking the Hamas figures, which we know are unreliable, and that they've exaggerated some of the figures for their own propaganda purposes.
Jacob, every single figure released by the Gaza Health Ministry has an Israeli-issued ID number attached to it, Jacob. Are you saying those figures aren't true?
The Gaza Health Ministry is part of the Hamas state. It's a
Jacob,
Hamas
they have an Israeli-issued ID number attached to them. Did you know that?
The figures that are coming out of Hamas are propaganda.
Did you know they have an Israeli-issued ID number?
They are part of the Hamas state. That's the key point. The Israeli number is an irrelevance. But let's get on to what...
Every single name of a human being released is a verified name, and we've seen pictures of hundreds, sometimes thousands of people.
Let's start with how this began.
When their homes were bombed, when their hospitals were bombed,
and the head of the UN points out that Hamas is using people as human shields. So terrorists are hiding behind children, the elderly and the unwell. And these terrorists...
Are you really okay with this?
With terrorists? Of course I'm not okay with terrorists using human shields. It's disgraceful. It's wicked.
Are you really okay with the bombing of a refugee camp?
Human shields are being used by Hamas.
Just answer the question, because we're on the streets because we're not okay with it. Are you okay with the bombing of a refugee camp?
You're on the streets supporting, giving succour to people who carried out the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. Are you okay with that? That's where it started.
We're on the streets to oppose the bombing of refugee camps, hospitals, homes, schools. Jacob,
where did this start?
Well, it started in 1948 with the ethnic cleansing of 700,000 Palestinians.
This started on the 7th of October with the murder of 1,300 people and babies being beheaded. You're justifying that?
Jacob, there are 2.2... Of course not.
OK, so will you criticise Hamas as terrorists?
Listen. I want the violence to end. Here's how the violence can end. There are 2.2 million people penned into an open-air prison in Gaza. The significant majority of those people are not from Gaza. They're refugees who were ethnically cleansed from their homes in 1948. Now, I know that the people you admire are fine with that. Winston Churchill said he didn't mind when a superior race displaced an inferior one. No, that's how he talked about what happened in Palestine. But some of us feel from all over Britain...
Most of the people... You've had plenty of time. Most of the people living in Israel have had to go there fleeing persecution where they lived, and mainly persecution in the Middle East.
No, actually, that's not true.
They're mainly Sephardi Jews.
Some of my family members who live in Israel came from Europe.
Yes, but the majority didn't. The majority came from the Middle East.
Do you know why my family went to Israel, Jacob? It's because white Christian Europeans who believed in tradition and hierarchy spent 2,000 years excluding and then massacring us. So I will take no lectures from white Christian Europeans who believe in order and hierarchy about anti-Semitism. Just because people like you spent thousands of years murdering us, I don't think Palestinians
people like me did not do that, actually. You can't blame me.
White Christian
you can't blame me for things that had nothing to do with me.
Do you know why I do? Do you know why I do? Because the same logic that says that some life is worthwhile and other lives aren't, that logic that for centuries Christian Europe
life is valuable. All life is valuable. But
now,
surely
that same logic is meted out to Palestinians.
Surely the state of Israel has the right to defend itself.
Palestinians who are ethnically cleansed to pay for Europe's
But they're not ethnically cleansed. This just isn't true. They're not ethnically cleansed.
Why is Gaza one of the most densely populated places in the world?
The Israeli state is trying to defend itself following an appalling attack, and it's trying to get terrorists. And these terrorists are using human shields to protect themselves. That's the thing that you ought to be condemning.
Repeatedly, the Israeli state has made claims about human shields, which have been exposed by
and now accepted by the United Nations. The head of the United Nations, we had on a clip 10 minutes ago with the head of the United Nations saying human shields were being used.
Understand.
So are you now saying he's lying?
I just don't understand why you're kind of visibly happy at the ability to justify the murder of enormous numbers of innocent people. The IDF's headquarters is in a residential neighborhood in Tel Aviv. According to any definition that Israel uses, that means Israel uses human shields. It doesn't mean...
Nobody wants innocent people to be killed.
Nobody wants innocent people to be killed. So do you think Britain should stop funding and supporting it?
Except Hamas wants innocent people to be killed.
Hamas aren't the people sending weapons to the Israeli state, which has killed 4,000 children. Your government is, so do you support it?
Hamas is the one that killed innocent people and killed babies. Deliberately.
4,000 children, Jacob.
Deliberately. So Hamas goes out and kills, as a matter of policy, innocent people. Then they hide behind innocent people to avoid justice. That's what you're defending.
Do you know what I want? I'm a Jew, right? I want to be able to go and pray at the Western Wall. And I want to be able to pray there next to my Palestinian friends, Muslims and Christians, in peace and freedom. It's not possible. I don't want to pray under a gun that occupies and oppresses the indigenous people of Palestine. I don't want to pray. I don't want to go to parties, as people went to parties on October the 7th, 5 miles away from an open-air prison in which 2.2 million people are penned in without access to sufficient food and water. So, I don't want that status quo. I understand
that. So are you therefore willing to condemn the actions on the 7th of October?
I want a world where it doesn't happen.
No, so are you willing to condemn it, or are you in fact sitting here justifying it?
Of course I'm not justifying it.
So you're willing to condemn it as an act of terrorism?
Of course I'm not justifying it.
And is a state entitled to defend itself against an act of terrorism?
Let me just ask the question back to you. Are you willing to condemn the murder of 10,000 people, including 4,000 children, armed and supported by the British state, of whose parliament you are a member?
I support the Israeli state's right to defend itself against the attacks on innocent civilians, which you are not being clear about condemning.
Do you support the displacement of 300 children in recent weeks in the West Bank by armed Israeli settlers supported by the British state?
Are you willing to condemn this attack on the 7th of October?
I don't want anyone to die.
You're not. I'm afraid Barnaby isn't willing to condemn Hamas.
I don't want anyone to die, but it's your government.
As always, let me know your thoughts. mailnog@gbnews.com. Coming up, you've had ages to bang on.